Welcome to House Talk, with videos that'll provide maintenance tips unique to Trilogy at Vistancia Homes. With your host, Doug Bowman.
Hello and welcome. While each of my 30 videos normally deal with a specific topic, today we're going to walk around the outside of the house and answer lots of questions in a video I like to call, What's This? If you stick with the video to the end, you'll be amazed at what you learned. So let's get started. Our tour is going to cover things that are buried, things that vent, things that drain, and strange things that are mounted to your house. So let's get started with things that are buried. So what's this? It's an easy one. It's your water meter box. Every house has one and they all look the same. Inside the box you'll find the meter. You can pull open the cover and see the actual digital readout that's used for your bill. The wire going to the cover is for the transmitter, so the city can read your usage automatically. And the blue valve here is the city's shutoff valve. Don't pay your bill, and this is where you'll find the lock they use to shut you off. If you want to learn more about your water supply system, see my House Talk video on that subject. The link is below, but I'll show all the links at the end of this video. So if that's the water meter, then what's this? This green round cover can be found in most front yards. It's just a pull box for communications cables. These cables were trenched down the street, and they used these boxes to tap off the main line and come up to your house. Not much excitement here, but if the cover ever comes off, just feel free to put it back on. As we walk through the front yard, you might see these. What are they, and why are there always two of them? These are cleanout traps for your main sewer line. If you grew up in a house with a basement, here's what the cleanout traps might have looked like. But what do you do when you don't have a basement? Well, these two traps allow you to route out your sewer line from your front yard. You may find them in your stones, pavers, or even in your driveway. As you can see from this early construction photo, these drain lines were quite deep, and they're opposite of what you might think. Because of its U-shaped construction, the trap closest to the street is for routing out the pipe to your house, and the trap closest to the house is for routing out the pipe to the street. If we look at that photo again, you'll see what I mean. The one exception to the trap cover direction might be in front yards that are very shallow. Here the trap covers may run parallel to the street instead of perpendicular. In this case, it's a crapshoot as to which one goes to the house and which one goes to the street. Your plumber will have to figure it out. Every house has these, and they were all visible when the house was new. But over the years, many have been covered or hidden by landscaping or renovations. You may not see them, and it might take a little digging, but they are there. The next buried enclosure is your irrigation valve box. This valve box only has 2 zones, but you can have more or less depending on your lot size and needs. Here there are 2 of everything, 2 valves, 2 solenoids, and the part most people don't even know about, the filter. While our water is treated by the city, it's still primarily well water and can plug up small emitters over time. So your filters may need some attention at least annually to make sure that they're not plugged. This is something a homeowner can do, and the filters can easily be cleaned and reused if it's something that you feel comfortable taking on. See my House Talk video on irrigation maintenance where we discuss the steps in detail. I'll post it below and at the end as well. While we're on the subject of irrigation, you probably have one of these old irrigation controllers that came with your house. You should know that the city of Peoria is still funding their Smart Irrigation Control rebate to help save water. They will pay you up to $250 to purchase a new smart controller. You're still responsible for the installation. The new ones connect to the internet and monitor temperature, rain, and wind in your area and use that information to make the smartest decisions for your yard. And hey, you can't beat free. If you think you're interested in a Wi-Fi smart controller, check to see if you have a strong Wi-Fi signal at the controller's location before you go forward. You might need a simple Wi-Fi extender to reach it. I'll put a link to the City of Peoria rebate webpage at the end of this video with the other links. Now let's talk about vents. The vent that is most important in your house is the dryer vent. But first I want you to answer a question. Think about the wall your dryer backs up to. Is it an inside wall or is it an outside wall? Think about it. This is what the vent looks like if your dryer backs up to an outside wall. It's just a few feet away, and they're easy to access and easy to clean. So where's your dryer vent if your dryer backs up to an inside wall? The answer is, it's up on the roof. Where the ductwork has farther to travel, may have a few bends along the way, and because of its location is much harder to clean. Here's a common dryer roof vent at Trilogy, but there are many different styles out there. These ducts and vents can accumulate lint over time and need to be cleaned. You already know you should clean the dryer's lint filter between each batch of clothes, but how often should you clean the dryer's exhaust duct and vents? Due to the fire risk, professionals will tell you annually, but there are several other signs to look for as well. When things take longer to dry, such as the need to put clothes back in for a second cycle. When clothes come out extremely hot, the dryer itself gets hot to the touch. Or there's a strange smell coming from the dryer when it's working, including a burning or musty smell. The last thing I'll say about dryers is that many newer dryers can determine if your dryer vent is clogged. They either monitor the vent flow automatically and notify you when it's clogged, or there's a test that you can run that only takes a few minutes. This option may not be obvious by looking at the control panel. You should check out your dryer manual to see if you have this option. Let's continue with our other vents. So what's this vent? This much smaller vent is actually an exhaust vent used with a central vacuum system. If you have one, it's most likely mounted high on your garage outside wall. When you use the central vac, the air gets sucked into the vacuum hose, travels through the house walls to the central vacuum unit's filter, but where does it go then? Most units just exhaust air into the garage, but in several models like this, they get exhausted outside. Exhausting outside helps keep the noise down in the garage. Now, this last vent is typical of what you would see when your kitchen cooktop has an exhaust fan that goes through the wall to the outside. These are common in microwaves and high-end exhaust fans mounted above a cooktop. Similar to the dryer vent, they will have a damper flap and a grating. The vents themselves require little maintenance. But the microwave and the exhaust fan inside may have an aluminum grease filter that needs a good cleaning with soap and water. You should check if you have one of these. They can get pretty gross if not maintained. Let's move on to our next topic, drains. What's with all these open drain lines? How do you know what's what? A Trilogy home can have as many as 6 or 7 drain lines coming out of the walls. They can be air conditioners, they can be for water heaters, and this fire sprinkler system as well. Most of the not-so-obvious drains start in the garage and route outside. So when you see an outside garage wall drain like this, ask yourself what's directly on the other side of the wall. This one is a drain for the fire sprinkler system. If we look directly behind the wall into the garage, you'll see a cover like this that contains some fire sprinkler components. The system has a relief valve like this for older homes and this for newer homes. This relief valve should never open or have water dripping out of the drain. If you see water dripping from the outside drain, you'll need to have it repaired by a certified residential fire system contractor. Moving on to water heater drains. Yes, I said drains. There may be 2 of them. Let's look behind the wall. First, every water heater has a temperature and pressure relief valve to protect the tank from exploding. You can follow the drain line from the relief valve to where it goes outside. The outside drain is routed low to the ground so you don't get splashed with scalding hot water if it ever operates. The second water heater drain comes from a drip pan. If you have a drip pan under your water heater, it might have a drain line that routes outside the garage as well. These 2 outside drains are usually within a few feet of each other outside. You should never see water dripping out of either one of them. The last drains we'll discuss are your air conditioning condensation drains. These lines are normally not in the garage wall because the cooling coil isn't in your garage, it's up in the attic. These lines originate in your attic and route to the nearest outside wall. They usually can be found above and below each other. The bottom drains normally leak, and the top drains you never want to see leaking. So let's explain why. Let's start with what's going on up in the attic. Some houses have 1, 2, or 3 air conditioners. Each air conditioner has a cooling coil mounted up in an enclosure supplied by the manufacturer. They're called an A coil because they look kind of like the letter A. These coils get extremely cold. When air passes through the cooling coil, the humidity in the air condenses and droplets form. This condensation collects in a primary drip pan that is installed on the inside of the enclosure. The condensation exits the enclosure and runs through a PVC drain line and exits the house about a foot off the ground. Condensation dripping from these drain lines is normal and expected while the unit's running. Now let's go back up to the enclosure. As your system gets old, unfortunately the primary drip pan starts to rust. In fact, here's a picture of mine after about 12 years of use. If you look at the ground below the normal outside drain, you can see if this rusting has started to occur. Here is what it would look like. You should check yours out as well. Seeing rust on the stones doesn't mean that the pan is rusted through yet, but it does mean that the clock has started ticking. If a drip pan is allowed to rust all the way through, or the flaking clogs the drain, water can come leaking out of the enclosure onto the drywall ceiling below and come crashing down if it goes undetected. To prevent this damage from occurring, AC contractors install a completely separate drain pan that hangs below the AC enclosure. Here's a photo of my secondary drip pan up in my attic. If the leak gets so bad that it could spill down onto the ceiling below, this secondary pan catches it before any damage is done and drains it away through a second PVC pipe. These drains exit the house way up high, as seen here. Because this type of leakage is abnormal, you should never see water leaking out from these higher outside drains. If you do have water dripping out, you need to contact an AC repairman as soon as possible to minimize any additional damage. The last thing I'll add about these lower drains is that if you've had a high-efficiency furnace installed, you may see water dripping from these lower drains in the winter. Because these furnaces capture as much heat as possible from the exhaust gases, moisture in the combustion air can condense and must be drained away as well. If you've had one of these high-efficiency furnaces installed, don't worry about it. This is normal. For our last topic today, we'll talk about wall-mounted boxes. Your utility easement, which is most likely on the garage side of your house, is where you'll find your water, gas, electric, and communication services that connect to your house. If you pay a monthly fee, this is probably where it starts. Here we're going to talk about some of the lesser-known boxes, the communication boxes. Some of these are locked by the service provider and some are open. These first big boxes are relics from the landline phone days. If you had or still have a landline, the installer had to provide you with a power supply and a battery backup in case your power went out. The battery is still there if you still have the service, but if the service was canceled, the only thing they take back is the actual battery, leaving you to have to look at this partially empty box for the next 30 years. While some boxes may look different, this is what they're used for. The next smaller box is where the coax cable service enters your house. The name of the initial cable company is usually on the cover. If you later go with a different cable company or sign up with a dish network, this is where they will connect to your house, although they may still use the original box. By the way, did you know that if you cancel your dish service, they don't come and remove the dish? Think of it this way. If you don't have a current service contract with them, they're trespassing. So if you want to throw away your dish, go for it. The last communication box is where fiber optic service enters the house. The difference between a coax cable internet service and a fiber optic service is that a coax cable requires a modem in your house. You don't get a modem with a fiber optic service. It terminates here in this box, outside, where it converts a beam of light in a glass fiber to an Ethernet signal. Pretty cool. If you want to know more about your home's internet or Wi-Fi, I have a few House Talk videos on this topic. The links are coming up at the end. Well, thanks for sticking with me. I know this was long, but hopefully you learned something new about your house. Feel free to subscribe to my House Talk channel, and don't forget to hit the like button.